So let us move to the next presentation, and it's a great pleasure to have now an old colleague, a friend from Bangladesh with us, Asif Ibrahim. He will look into Bangladesh. He's from Bangladesh. He has a big biodata. I just give you some highlights. He's of course the vice chairman of a big garment group in Bangladesh, exporting to the EU, to US, and probably also other countries. I've been following the company since early 2000s. It has been growing steadily. He's also a director of the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers Exporters Association, where he is responsible for all the projects that BGMEA is been doing. So he can give us some highlights also there. He has many more heads. He's, for example, also the chairman of the Chittagong Stock Exchange, Chittagong being the second largest city in Bangladesh. And he's also a former president of a big Chamber of Commerce, the Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and many more things. But he will talk about with us about now
also former network member of ITC Executive Forum. Don't forget that.
You're still a network member of ITC. That's why we can always reach out to you and discuss with you. So thanks very much, Asif. Can you try to upload your presentation?
Yes, I'm going to upload it right now. Let me see. There you go. Can you see it?
Please use we can now see it, yes. Please use the chat, the Q&A box for questions, but you also can ask some questions afterwards. Up to you now, Asif.
Okay, let me go with the presentation. Okay, this is a story of how the Bangladesh R&D industry handled the crisis of COVID-19, the first wave, and just recently started second wave, and some of the challenges that we have regarding the sustainability of the industry, which is actually very important for the economy of Bangladesh. This particular sector, ready-made garments, short R&G, contributes to almost 84% of the foreign exchange earning of Bangladesh and provides livelihood to millions of women, mainly from rural areas, and it has really played a very significant role for empowerment of women in a moderate Muslim majority country. So from not only from economic perspective, but also from social perspective, this sector has played a very critical role in the country's economic development since the early 80s. Let me start with the situation regarding the first wave of the coronavirus pandemic. As you can see, the 2018 to 19 is represented in blue, and 2019-20 is represented in red. As you can see from July, the export drops actually recorded the lowest in history, as April, May, and June year to year compared to 2019. You can see the drops next to the bar. It registered minus 85% in April, minus 63% in May, and minus 11.4% in the month of June. So that was the first impact. We all know that that particular month of April was actually when it all started to happen globally. So you could see some of the effects of cancellations and of orders from our buyers in North America and European Union, particularly in this slide. Then you can also see that the export growth, which you can see from 1999 onwards up to 2020, it had actually maintained quite a steady growth curve, and it peaked in the year 2010-11. But this year, if you can see, in the entire history of this sector, beginning from 2000 till 2020, 20 years been projected here, it has experienced the largest negative growth. So that is actually very, very significant. There has been a free fall in the export. The fiscal year 2019-20 ended with almost $28 billion worth of R&G export, which was recorded at $34 billion during the period last year. So as I had shown in the previous slide, 18.45% is the negative growth. The decline in export in the year 2019-20 in actuality is 6.3 billion, which is around 1/5 of our total export last year. And we lost almost 3.73 billion worth of export just in the last quarter, which is April to June 2020. So that is also very, very alarming. The growth of the ready-made garments export during July to September is about 0.85%. That means export was leveled off on a year-to-year basis. And this was made possible because mainly some of the orders which were initially cancelled by the buyers were reinstated. Export again started plummeting from October of 2020 because of the second wave. First of all, the worry that the second wave was coming, and when the UK in Europe first went into lockdown, I guess that is when some of the buyers in not only UK but also rest of the continent in Europe also started to feel the panic, and exports again started plummeting. This is the global ready-made garments export order cancellations and also kept on hold by buyers according to region. As you can see, 52 million in Canada, almost $500 million, a little bit more than $500 million in USA. In Europe, 1.9 billion US dollars, and in non-traditional markets, which is North America. You also have Australia. You also have China and India. Also experienced $620 million worth of cancellations. Also, apart from just the figures of dollars, you can see that the factories actually faced financial loss because of the non-payment of the buyers. Discounts were being put as a pressure technique by the buyers to the factories, deferred payment, deferred shipment, forced loan to pay the commitment for the working capital through back-to-back LCs. Some of the buyers, reputed brands that we all have heard the stories in BBC, CNN, they actually went into bankruptcy. And also other payment receivables, there were very much of uncertainty, and many of the payments have still not been received. Then again, we had to comply with the new health protocol that we had to adopt to prevent contamination. That also had added certain costs to the factories as we had to go for the operation. Then there was the issue of the sudden disruption in the supply chain, like the unavailability of accessories and processing requirement made the operations very inefficient. This all led to an increased unit cost of production against declining unit value. A very sad statistics, year to year, I guess this is the same story, not only for Bangladesh, but also for majority of the least developed or developing economies who depend a lot on TNC, textile and clothing sector, as one of their primary export earners. The drop of the price that is being paid by particularly the Americas, United States of America and European Union. According to NBR, which is the National Board of Revenue, the figure dropped to 1.79% in terms of percentage. In the US market, the drop was 1.84%. That is from 2014-15 up to 2019. And in Europe, the price from that same period, 2014-15 to 2019, experienced a drop of 1.64%. And this is a recent phenomena, breaking it down. This is the Bangladesh's ready-made export unit price trend. You can see from January up to November, and you can see the declining trend. It is because of the COVID impact, the pressure is even more, and prices are declining even more as we speak. Now, how did we respond? We are very lucky that our government, at the very beginning, at the very end of March and early April, they could foresee that there is a problem, and we from the association BGMEA, we played a significant role in terms of collecting all the data from majority of the suppliers regarding the cancellation numbers and regarding the held orders numbers. And we talked with the government. We had series of meetings, and our Honorable Prime Minister was also very dynamic in this respect. And the government announced a stimulus package and also offered policy supports in terms of cautious reopening, allowing cautious reopening of the factories by enforcing certain health protocols. This is also, we work very closely with the concerned ministries and government departments, the health departments, the municipality. So it was a coordinated effort from public and private on restarting the factories. We also had to engage significantly and negotiate with the global brands with the support of the local media as to how we are opening the factories, ensuring all the safety protocols. Some of the issues regarding health that we undertook as an industry in Bangladesh is at a glance you can see most of the factories had remained closed during 26th March to 26th April because of the general lockdown initially that was announced by the government. Export-oriented industries were allowed after a period of about 10 to 12 days, we were allowed to operate. Most of the factories that were allowed to operate were respecting the instructions that we gave very strictly from our association. We also took a very staggered approach to reopen the factories where we had the tripartite committees involved, which involved the government, the trade union and business organizations, following a very, very strict zone-based approach, and of course, maintaining the highest possible safety standards. Even after the reopening of the factories, very cautious steps were followed. Only we started with 30% of the factory capacity to begin with, so that we did not, most of these factories in Bangladesh have thousands of workers. So we started off very small, and then we saw what was the rate of the infection, whether they were safe or not, and then we started to open gradually. Then also we followed the compliance of BGMEA's opening guidelines. We had a very serious audit team going around and inspecting the factories that we allowed to open, that were given the permission to open. And we also partnered at the same time with an international company, agency called Inspectorio, I'm sure most of you have heard about it, to help the factories mitigate the COVID resurgence. We also set up state-of-the-art on behalf of the association, from the own initiative of the association. We set up state-of-the-art PCR COVID test lab for the workers. In addition, we set up 2 sample collection facilities and operated by our association for suspected patients working in the factories. We also had a very strong counseling and awareness raising with a company called Maya, and we had signed an agreement to provide free services to help prevent and limit the spread of COVID-19, addressing general medical and mental health related issues amongst the workers. Now, the second wave, unfortunately, as you can see, this is the month-wise export growth, January to November of financial year 2019 versus financial year 2020. This is again in year to year and value in US dollar. In January, it was 2.98%, and then it really dipped down in April, 62% in May, gradual recovery in June and July. August and September was actually good. We finally could see some positive figures, but then again, at the onset of the second wave, you can see that again, the dip has started, 7.7% in October, November already there. And I don't know, because the Thanksgiving and Christmas is one of the key selling period, and that is already going to be over, because we have already shipped the goods out of Bangladesh. These goods are already in Europe and North America. So we are very worried what is going to happen post-Christmas retail situation in Europe and North America, and that's going to have a big impact on this graph that you see here. This is the retail clothing store sales in USA and European Union. This is also showing very similar V-shaped recovery, but the retail sales growth is still slashed very much by a quarter, as you can see from January again up to October, corresponding the the downward pattern is very similar to what is reflected in the factory status in Bangladesh and the industry status in Bangladesh. I think we feel that some of the ways we can address these challenges is we have asked for extension of the term of the stimulus package, which was announced during the first wave of the pandemic, and reevaluate the needs of the industry in the backdrop of the second wave and global economy. I would like to mention here, when the first package of stimulus was announced, it totaled very close to $1 billion for our sector alone. The government had given us a condition that this amount will have to be channeled directly as payment of wage to the workers' account. And the government said that it has to be channeled through mobile banking services. So within a period of 2 weeks, we had to open 3 million new mobile banking accounts of the workers, and majority of this $1 billion was given through this mobile banking account of the workers for 4 months to pay their wages during the very critical phases of the first wave of the pandemic. The second issue was legal protection to deal with the bankrupted buyers. That was again a big problem, and we have to develop insolvency resolution mechanism, which unfortunately we still do not have a very strong mechanism in Bangladesh. So we have to really fast track this policy, and loss financing mechanism is also something that we have to deal with, the forced loans that are being created because of the bankruptcies by the buyers and by non-payment of the buyers on the export commitments. Of course, maintaining the health and hygiene practices at workplace and effectively designing a social protection scheme for the working class is also something that we have to come up with a policy and fast track the policy towards implementation. And of course, we have to constantly engage with the different brands that buy from Bangladesh regarding how together as partners we can address this problem and go forward. Now, we have to look at the future. I mean, we can't all be very gloomy and just stop thinking. We have to think about how we are going to be sustainable and how we will address the issues of Bangladesh ready-made garment sector contributing for years for the development of Bangladesh economy. We have ambitious growth projections of by 2041 to become a developed economy. We had been maintaining one of the most impressive GDP growth rates prior to the COVID pandemic. Even during the COVID pandemic, a report by IMF had shown that Bangladesh in the region, amongst the countries that we have, actually performed better amongst the rest of the countries. One of the key reasons, of course, was because of the very good crop of agriculture. And we also had a lot of remittances from expatriates of Bangladeshis, millions of them who work across the globe. So those two actually helped us, overcome a huge damage and dent to the economy during this period. Now, how were we going to go ahead? We, from our board and from our association, we have come up with 7 pledges towards a greener, more humane industry, which are encompassed with one single idea, which is go human and go green. Pledge for workers' education, pledge for workers' children education, pledge for mental health. These are some of the projects that Matthias has talked about that we will undertake from BGMEA. Pledge for sustainability, pledge for tradition and heritage. Exporting culture is one of the key areas that we have thought about here. Pledge for workers' health and pledge for efficiency. Some of the emerging realities which really haunt us is the fact that we have inadequate capacity for backward linkage sectors of TNC in Bangladesh. Capacity-wise, there is still 20% shortfall for knitted fabrics and 60% shortfall for woven fabrics because of the fact that the investment in knitted fabrics is usually much less than of the woven fabrics. This is one of the major drawbacks for the industry to qualify for the EU GSP in post-LDC phase. As most of you are not probably aware, I'm just reiterating that we are also facing an LDC graduation. So some of the preferential trade, the trade preferences will be eroded because of the fact that we will be graduating. We would need actually to comply with the double transformation rules of origin. And this also indicates huge opportunity for investment in primary textiles, especially in woven and man-made fiber-based in Bangladesh. We are setting up the special economic zones to attract such investment and attracting the investors with a very friendly policy support from our side. The global geopolitical risk, which is the trade war that is going on between USA and China, the issues between Hong Kong and China and Japan, South Korea, trade tensions and concerns about shifts towards more protectionist policies. Yet the EVFTA is a glaring example of very prudent commercial diplomacy. Changes are expected in post-pandemic market in terms of e-tailing, a continued upsurge in e-commerce with less physical assets, and the resulted changes in the supply chain have both pros and cons. The 4IR is a key challenge that Bangladesh R&D sector will face, the TNC sector. The paradox of jobs and competitiveness and opportunities through reskilling and upskilling are some of the challenges that we will have to see. On the green growth front, we are very proud to say that we have 125 lead garment factories who are certified by the US Green Building Council. So we have made the necessary investments for greenery, and it is still continuing for greening our production facilities. 9 out of the world's top 10 garment factories are in Bangladesh, the green ones. 500 more factories in Bangladesh are in the process of getting the LEED certification. BGMEA has joined the UN Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Change with an ambition to reduce the GHG emissions by 30% till the year 2030. And we have pledged the Green Button Initiative with the German government, which is a state-owned global seal channeled and run by the German government, to ensure that if the textile or the garment has a green button, it would say that the entire process of creating that garment is actually very organic, and it meets all the social and environmental requirements that the SDG goals comply with, and all the international norms that are being followed, also in terms of workplace practices and fair wages and all that. But that's a big challenge. The fair wage issue is a big challenge because of the declining prices. I don't know how that money will come from and that investment will come from. Some of the opportunities that are there, as per the WTO data of 2019, we are positioned second, holding 6.83% share of the global market. As you can see from the pie, it will give you a clearer picture. 31% of the global exports are still very much done by China for textile and clothing. Bangladesh is at the second position with 7%. Vietnam is at 6%, the green one, and India is about 3%. And then Turkey, Indonesia, Cambodia, and others contribute the rest. So we are still positioned to take a big chunk of the China's pie. I mean, not only Bangladesh, but Vietnam, India, Cambodia, Turkey, everybody is vying for that piece of that big pie of 31% of China. So let's see how we can take advantage through our very strategic approaches. So that's all that I have today regarding the presentation. If anybody has any questions, they can ask me in the chat box or open out their microphone and ask if the moderators allow. Thank you very much, Matthias.
Great, thank you very much, Asif. It was a great presentation. I think good insights. I have a couple of questions, but I wait until maybe we see some questions in the chat, in the Q&A box. There's not really a question to you right now, but Jaina, do we have some hands raised for some live questions?
Not. Yes, we have one. Here we go. Merci.
Bonjour. Merci pour les informations. Alors, j'ai juste une question concernant les méthodes dont les entreprises du textile à Bangladesh ont été accompagnées pour dépasser la crise de COVID-19. Quels sont les mécanismes d'accompagnement?
Delphine, can you help with the translation?
No, I can't hear the translation.
No, I asked my colleague to translate for you in English.
Yes, the question was, what are the methods used by Bangladeshi companies to overcome the crisis linked to the pandemic of COVID?
Some of the measures I have already shown in my presentation. We had to restart the factories very soon. That was the key challenge. And initially, everybody was in a very panic mode. But the government had given us the support. They said the factories has to run because the economy is so much dependent on the factories. So the necessary health protocols that was needed by opening the factories gradually and slowly, by ensuring enough audit, by ensuring all the health facilities nearby the factories, converting some of the old warehouses near the factories which were not being used, identifying them, renting them out from our association, converting them into facilities if the workers were infected. All those measures were taken to ensure that operation can begin immediately, very soon after the COVID pandemic started. If you can translate it for him, please.
I think it was automatically translated by the translation services.
Okay.
Jana, there are more questions or more hand raised?
Not at the moment.
Okay, we still have a few minutes before we go to the next one. I have a couple of questions, so maybe they might be of interest to them. I made them one by one, and if someone in between comes, Jana, let us know.
Please remember that there are questions on the Q&A, should you want to answer some of them, as well as your own, of course.
True, but they're not related to this presentation. So one question I have for you is with regard to BGMEA, so the sector association, which has been very vocal about the order cancellation of many buyers. And if I compare this with some of the countries we are working at right now in the Middle East, in North Africa, they have been really shy of raising their voice because I don't know for what reason, maybe because they were fearing some backlashes from buyers. Had BGMEA experienced some repercussions of being so frank vis-a-vis major brands and retailers of not paying the orders?
It's a mixture actually, Matthias. In the first wave, actually everybody was in panic mode. So when we had asked for the cancellation data and orders being held data from our suppliers, initially in the first wave we received a lot of responses, and that is how we could determine that close to $3 billion worth of cancellations took place. Unfortunately, during the second wave, when we had sent out the same survey, this time it seems like there is less response from the same suppliers that had actually responded with the specific details of cancellations. So that tells us that maybe they have some sort of pressure from their buyers not to disclose the cancellation data. It is fully understood. But I also feel personally, and also from the association, that in this pandemic situation, where everybody is really trying to survive, it is a matter of survival for millions and millions of people. I think we need to be transparent and not worry about the figures or the stock values. I think we need to be more humane now until this crisis is overcome. Let us all work together and try and overcome this crisis first. Later on, when situation comes to normal, then I think we can look at the stock values and on profit figures. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's interesting, and you were probably not there at the beginning when ITC made this introductory remarks. We are also working next year a little bit on can we not find a better way in the governance structure of this global value chain to see how we could look into a fairer way of dealing with each other. And that's certainly
I
a
would
thing
love
we
to
would like to
contribute
be
in
part of.
that initiative. I would love to contribute in that.
Great, that's good. And I hope also our manufacturers. Any other questions, Jana, which we have, or any hand raised?
Not at the moment.
Okay, we have still 3 minutes before we get to the next one. I have a couple of more questions.
Okay.
You mentioned that you had looked into some legal protection against bankruptcies. So we receive a lot of questions from the companies we working with in the GTEX countries. That's saying, how can we do some risk mitigation to assess the viability of our clients, or those clients from Europe and the US that are coming to us now? How can we assess that they are not going to bankruptcy and that we're producing for them and then there's no shipment? So can you explain a little bit about what you do in more detail? How are you
in Bangladesh? In Bangladesh, we unfortunately, because it's a relatively new country, we're celebrating our 50 years next year, and the policies and everything are also relatively new. And in terms of private sector industry growth, it has hardly been 40 years that we had private sector industrial growth in this country. We still do not have a very structured bankruptcy protection policy in Bangladesh. We have the policies that we have are very old policies. Some of it are inherited from the British colonial days. We have very recently amended the Companies Act. Then again, many of the policies that we wanted to bring forward, we could not. We have to look very seriously into the issue of bankruptcy protection, because in the industry itself, we used to have close to 4,500 members in our association. During our last election, we only saw 1,900 members. So many factories that used to be in operation, they are now challenged. Because of issues of sustainability, they have not been able to keep up with the growing demand of lowered global prices and also the increasing prices amongst the factories itself, and many other issues of trying to maintain the compliance requirements and other international requirements, audit requirements. So one of the key challenges we have in Bangladesh is because of the working capital being financed through back-to-back letter of credit, and also the use of facilities of bonded warehouse. I think these are the two areas we are having some issues regarding how do we actually find out what is the amount, how do we deduct at the calculation. I think that is where we are having some difficulties, but hopefully this pandemic has shown us that the factories really need protection. So hopefully we can get there, but it's going to be a big challenge.
Great, thanks very much, Asif again. Jana, anybody else? A last call?
No.
No? So then, Asif, thank you very much for a very insightful presentation. I learned a lot about Bangladesh, and I'm looking forward to working together with you on this on the structure of global governance structures.
Yeah, and improve GVC. That has to happen because you see this industry with tremendous potential in Africa, and I'm so disappointed to see what's happening in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, we had a fantastic opportunity of developing this industry. Many of the factories, big factories in Bangladesh, had actually been invited, and they have set up factories in Ethiopia, and where we have many Bangladeshi mid-management people who has gotten the expertise who are working there. So I hope that they can resolve and overcome this. And I know personally that you have been working on a project to promote African cotton. So that is also something that we can look into in the future. But this total value chain needs to be analyzed very deeply, and we have to get to a solution. Otherwise, everybody's back is against the wall. The manufacturers and exporters, particularly in the least developed economies and developed economies, are facing the crunch. We have to come out of it.
I agree. So thanks very much, Asif.
Thank you.
But we still are hopeful that we'll see an end of this crisis.
Thank you.
I don't know when, but hopefully very soon.
Thank you.